I love to see the towns passing by and to ride these rails neath God's blue sky. Let me travel this land from the mountains to the sea, 'cause that's the life I believe He meant for me. And when I'm gone and at my grave you stand, say God called home your rambling man.
Welcome to Ramblin' Man Podcast, episode number 165. This one's with Jay Master, and we talk about design and branding. Jay's somebody I've followed on Instagram for a long time, love his work, and we, once in a while, will talk about old school rap in DM. But it's great to finally have Jay on the podcast. It's very fascinating hearing his journey. For more info on Jay, go to jmasterdesign.com, JayMasterDesign.com, or follow him on Instagram at live_design_co. And I appreciate Jay for coming on. Sponsor this week is Feral Giant. Feral Giant is a graphic design, illustration, and social media consultation company based here in Knoxville, Tennessee. So they do work for clients big and small all over the country, all over the globe, in fact. But they also do photography, videography, video editing, and audio editing, website design, SEO, writing, content development. Hell, they'll babysit your kids if it nets them money. So make sure you give them a follow on social media on either Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn at @FeralGiant. And be sure to give them an email today and hire them for your next project. Without much further ado, here's the episode. Where are you originally from?
I am originally from Boulder, Colorado.
Okay. Boulder, Colorado. I was just out there in September. Seeing
All right.
Deltron 3030, Run the Jewels, Wu-Tang Clan in Denver.
Nice. Where'd you see them at? What location?
I think it's a new amphitheater. It was
Okay.
it was very
Not Red
weird.
Rocks.
No, I wish, but no. It was weird in that it was like in a business park. Like there were all these massive buildings and it really looked like a business park. And then all of
Interesting.
a sudden there was this giant amphitheater right in the middle of it.
Was that your first time seeing Wu-Tang?
First time seeing Wu-Tang, like fifth or sixth time seeing Run the Jewels.
All
I hate
right.
to say it. I love Run the Jewels. I love Wu-Tang, but Deltron 3030 actually playing like blew my mind. I was like, that was
They stole the show, huh?
that was the instigator to go. I was like,
all right.
they play so infrequently
Hmm.
that I need to see them play. And it was amazing.
Awesome.
It was also a cloud of weed smoke from beginning to end.
Well, you are in Colorado.
I know.
You are.
Boulder was wild. Like, so what was it like being in Boulder? Because now it's like tech and very expensive.
When I grew up there, right? Like, I was born in 1973. So I spent my 80s there. I graduated high school in 91. It was a hippie enclave. So both my parents were hippies.
Okay.
And just sort of they just stopped there and ended up just staying there, right?
Yeah.
And we've got the University of Colorado there.
Yeah.
And so it's this mix of kids coming in, it's probably a little bit bigger now, but it was like 40,000 kids every year coming in August, leave in May.
Yeah.
Right. And so you sort of have these quiet summers. But it's progressed into this, what was called yuppie, to now it's like tech.
Yeah.
And, you got Whole Foods everywhere. And, I feel really grateful though to have grown up there.
Yeah.
Beautiful place. I could literally ride my bike anywhere and not think about anything.
Yeah. Well, and it's wild because
a parallel. I grew up in Knoxville, Tennessee, which is University of Tennessee.
Hmm.
So same thing. Growing up, we were always a college town until
Hmm.
like the 2010s, like early 2010s, did that start fading. It's still there, but it's not as prevalent. And it's same thing of like having that glut of people in town, and then they all go away during the summer or winter break. And the funniest thing to me was we still have to drive like 30 minutes to go to a mountain, and driving through Boulder, it was just like, good Lord, the mountain's right there. It's right there.
Oh yeah, it was, it was awesome growing up in that. I lived in the mountains too.
Yeah.
My parents had a house up there at one point. So that was fun. But it was great being right next to the mountains because you can get on your mountain bike and ride up, and
Yeah.
you can do a 5-6 mile ride and just have this, it's just beautiful.
Yeah. So what did your folks do for a living?
Well, let's see here. My stepdad, he was a nurse.
Okay.
My mom did a bunch of jobs. She was a bartender, just random jobs. And then she stopped working maybe about 15, 20 years ago.
Okay. Do you have
And
any brothers, siblings,
I
any
got a
brothers?
sister that still lives in New York or in Westminster,
Okay.
which is just in between Denver and Boulder.
Okay.
And she's a nurse.
So were you always into art as a kid, into like comic books or cartoons, or where did
I
that come
was,
from?
I was, when I was a kid, actually, I used to love drawing basketball, like dudes dunking and,
Okay.
3-point Larry Bird and, all sorts of stuff, right? So I'd have drawings on my wall of like these posters that I would try to imitate and copy. Um, and I wasn't really like into like comic books and things like that. A lot of my friends were,
Okay.
and I just didn't do a lot of that. And so I'd
Okay.
always sketch in class and things like that. And it took me a while to actually figure out that I wanted to become a designer, or that was even really, I would never even call myself an artist, to be honest with you.
Okay. Did,
Um,
but like you were doodling and stuff, did they encourage that? Did they like understand that at all? Was there any art in the family at any place?
oh my parents understood it, right?
Okay.
And they got it. And yeah, so I was never,
Okay.
there's nothing against me doing it, right? Except for I should be getting better grades. That
Well,
aspect of it, right? But
that aspect always comes up because I am the only artist in my family. And it's my dad was a truck driver, my mom worked for the phone company. So I always find that interesting when somebody is a artist or a designer or creative and no one else in their family is.
right,
Like
right.
how
My mom was always an artist. She was into doing like macrame and crafts,
okay.
sort of stuff like that.
Okay.
So it was always around,
Okay.
and in Boulder too, there's just a ton of artists everywhere. I
Yeah.
mean, it's artist music, there's all sorts of stuff going on all the time, right?
Yeah. I feel like Boulder back then was probably like what Asheville was like 20 years ago. Because
That's
Asheville,
pretty accurate. Yeah.
yeah, because Asheville back then was like a artist community, very much that way. And it's same way. Once beer got in there, it's now a huge tech city,
Hmm.
which is so weird. It's so
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah. It's weird going back to Boulder and seeing sort of what it's become,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The core of it's still there and it still sort of looks like it used to.
Yeah.
Because they haven't let a lot of big buildings come in. There's always been these ordinances, right, where they're pretty strict about that stuff. They don't even let a lot of big box places come in. Like it's
Yeah.
all on the outskirts of town, right? So like they couldn't open up a McDonald's downtown. Like it's just not
It's
allowed.
crazy.
Yeah,
That's good, but that's crazy. Yeah.
it is. It's crazy, right? It's different.
Okay. So
Um,
I was going to say, when you were younger, do you remember the first piece or an artist, or I know you don't call yourself an artist, but something that made you kind of click or that you found on your own, something that stood out to you?
yeah, I mean, I guess, looking back, probably like somewhere like Salvador Dali or something like that, probably along those
Okay.
lines, where I would see something that would just be amazed by it.
Yeah.
Even the Afro painter, right?
Yeah.
Like watching him growing up, just seeing what he did and how he would do it so simply,
Mhm.
right? It's not easy, right? He made it look easy, but how he did it so simply and just created these pictures, and it was amazing to me, the process and the craft of it. And I really didn't realize that I wanted to be a designer till I was probably about 26. So I
Okay.
got a sort of late start. So I went to community college for a little while. Um, Figured I couldn't really figure out what I wanted to do.
Was
And
that
so
there in Boulder? You
that
went
was
to?
in Boulder, yeah. And
Okay.
lived in Denver for a while and did a bunch of different things. I've worked a number of jobs in my life. So I've had some experience. And I was thinking about moving away. I wanted to go get my degree, right? And I didn't know what. I was thinking business. Um, it's just more practical.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about, okay, well, maybe I want to move to Oregon. It's beautiful out there. I had a little bit of family out there. And I started thinking about it. My sister mentioned Hawaii. And so I'm like, oh, Hawaii, that's interesting. It's warm,
Yeah.
right? And if I went and I got residency, I could get school there and it's pretty cheap.
Huh.
So I ended up doing that.
Holy crap. Okay.
Yeah, so
That's
me,
amazing.
her, and one of her friends just got on a plane and ended up going there.
Man.
Um, and I got my residency, so I lived there for a year prior. Ended up going to community college
Hmm.
where I was just taking classes so that I could transfer. And I took a Mac art class,
Yeah.
and that was immediately it.
Okay.
Like that was the point where I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life.
Okay. So it just clicked.
It just
What?
clicked. Like, it was this combination of technology, which I've always sort of been into,
Mhm.
and this art that's been sort of lingering in my head for a long time, right? But never really came to the surface in a way that I could manifest it, right?
Okay.
And
I was
so
gonna
it
I was
struck.
gonna yeah, I was gonna ask what year was that? Because I'm trying to picture which computer that would have been.
Let's see, I moved to Hawaii in 96. So
Okay.
it was probably 98,
Okay. So that was right
90,
before the new
97.
Bubble IMAX came out.
Yes, and the G-Force came out right after I
Yeah.
started doing that.
Okay. So that still would have been like the Performa machine. So
Or G3s, I'm sorry, G3s.
G3s. So I
Yes.
was my high school had a vocational program, and we only had two computers in the entire school. One was in drafting and one was in graphic arts
Okay.
printing. And it was the old 2CI one
Mhm.
color thing, but then we got to upgrade to like a Performa 6116 or something by my senior year. So I remember all those years of on some really crappy machines.
They were, they did the job what they needed to do
Yeah.
back then, right? Like
Yeah. Okay. So Mac Art. Uh, Let me go back to Hawaii though. Which
okay.
island were you on?
I was on Oahu, so we lived in Honolulu.
Okay, Honolulu.
So,
Were you going out and I hate to ask this stupid question, but were you
oh,
going out and surfing or exploring Honolulu at all?
oh, absolutely. I
Okay.
mean, when we moved there, right? Like I literally moved there with my bike and a backpack,
Okay.
right? So we stayed in a youth hostel, had to find a place to live, um, and just set up life there, right? And almost came back to the mainland a couple times.
Mhm.
Couldn't find work. It's expensive.
Yeah.
It's hard to survive there, but it's as a 22-year-old kid, in Hawaii, it was just
Yeah.
gorgeous. Like the ocean's right there. So, you surf, you mountain bike, you spend almost all your time outside.
Okay. I'm just
And
laughing thinking you're like, all right, I came back to the mainland. It's October. I need to get back to Hawaii. It's about to start getting cold over here. I gotta get.
I can't stand the cold. My wife too. We both cannot stand the cold, right? And it's gonna be like we're gonna get down to zero, like 15 here in the next couple days, and I hate it. I hate it.
Yeah. I was talking to my friend Hannah earlier that she's up in Cleveland and they had said we were going to get to 1 degree here in
Yeah,
Knoxville. And
man.
it was just like, oh, it went up to a whole 8 degrees. Now the
Oh,
predictor. But I am
terrible.
shorts in the wintertime. Like
Me
cold
too.
does not really affect me. So
I wear my flip-flops all the time. Even when it's cold out.
although
Uh,
I will say there's a comedian from here that's in Los Angeles and he posted this morning where it was like 40 degrees in Los Angeles. And
yeah,
he was like, what the hell? Why did I come all the way out here? And
yeah.
it's
Even Hawaii
40.
today is like a high of like 64 or something like that.
That's
So
crazy.
everywhere's cold right now.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you're in Austin now.
I'm in Austin. Yeah.
Yeah. I've got a friend that lives down there, and he and I have joked. He keeps saying, "Hey, you need to come down here and visit." I was like, nowhere between May and September will I be
Pretty
there.
much.
Yeah. I was
Yeah.
like,
If
I
you come
know it
between
gets
April and
95
May.
up here, 95 up here, but it's also 95 to 100% humidity. And you don't go outside.
Yeah. We don't have your humidity, luckily.
Yeah.
It's probably only 60%, 50%. So that helps. But
Yeah. I got to come in the winter sometime. One of these days I'm gonna make it down to CropCon when I can figure out how to. I think it and Creative South both kind of happen at similar times, and
similar
it's like
times. Yeah.
and I think even Creative Works over in like it's like, guys, let's
You
spread
just
this
separate
out.
them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's do one every month. Like,
There
let's
you
figure
go.
this out. Although the same thing, Memphis, May to September is a no. That is, whoa, that's brutal.
Yeah. Hot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you going to community college, Mac art class. Was that in a community college or was that at
So
the
that was in a
university?
community college. And so right
Okay.
when I started doing that, they came up with this new program. It was like a guinea pig program of 3D and graphic design.
Okay.
So I ended up going into that program, along with getting all my other, prerequisites needed. But we started to learn 3D, which was super cool. Something I never thought I would ever get into. Wasn't that good at it. I was good enough at it though, right? That I could start to figure out and make things and do some cool stuff with it. So we were learning Maya,
Okay.
and also Director. I don't know if you remember
Oh
Director.
yeah. Macromedia director. Oh yeah.
And Photoshop. Well, I want to say 2.
Yeah.
It was 1, 2, right in that range, right? So right at the sort of genesis of Photoshop.
Yeah. Because when we got Photoshop at Fulton at my high school, it came with the scanner, and it was called Photo Photoshop. It wasn't Adobe,
right.
and it was one.
Yeah.
with
Yeah,
that
it was
chunky
amazing stuff, though.
with that chunky eraser, that blocky
yeah.
eraser.
Yeah, remember it well. Yeah. It was it was cool stuff, So we got to learn. We had silicon machines up at the university that we got access to. So we would go up there and we'd probably spend 3-4 hours or more a day, learning how to model and render things and do all sorts of stuff. I got decent at modeling and texturing things and doing lighting and things like that. I wasn't very good at animating. But it was a 2-year degree, so I ended up getting my degree through there. And then I ended up getting a job at Konami.
Oh, okay.
They had moved into the space down in Waikiki. And interestingly enough, I was originally hired to work on a soccer game, Major League Soccer. So ESPN Major League Soccer. And
Wow.
so my what I was supposed to do was actually map players' faces on the 3D models, right? It's a pretty entry level sort of grunt work. But I knew a couple sound programs, SoundForge and Director. And so they're like, okay, SoundForge. Well, we're going to move you into the sound department. We have a game that we are porting called, Microsoft's Combat Simulator.
Okay.
I'm like, okay, cool. But what they had done was they had taken the Japanese translations of the English instead of the actual English that they could have gotten. I don't get it. But anyhow, I had to translate what they had from the actual game. And then I created out a script where then they were going to go re-record it.
Okay. Was Konami based in Hawaii or was it based in Japan?
Out of Japan.
That's what I thought. Okay.
So they had an office also in California.
Okay.
And at that time, we were working on GameCube. PlayStation 2 had just come out. This was actually for Dreamcast.
Oh God, there's a name I have not heard.
It's an amazing system.
Okay, I was going to say there's a name I have not heard in a lot of years. Dreamcast.
Right? Dreamcast and Xbox also, right? So
yeah,
it was cool because again, I'm at that point I'm a 24-year-old dude, and at my desk I have every single console.
Man,
like every single one. So I'm spending my entire day on these consoles. So I did that out pretty well, I guess. And then they hired me to write the script for the next Major League Soccer game, which was a
That's
crazy
insane.
experience
Yeah.
because what ended up happening was, right, is like we were going to hire two guys. It was going to be in Spanish and it was going to be in English. And so one of the guys, Jack Edwards, he used to play for, the U.S. soccer team, and he was the announcer at the time for ESPN.
Okay.
So we're going to use him as talent. So I needed to watch. I probably watched 200 hours or more of his soccer analysis. So I would just sit there, I'd just write down, everything, the little thing that he said. And, you start to notice patterns, right? Of like, okay, these are like his lines, his tags that he says all the time. But when you're working in a game like that, an environment like that, it's all based off of triggers, right? So, for
Mhm.
example, I'm at midfield and I do a forward pass to a forward, right near the
Mhm.
box or something like that. That, depending on the kind of pass, I have to have like a pool of 10 to 20 different lines that will then work with another pool of 10 to 20 different lines that are all triggered based off of whatever happens.
Okay.
Right? So you end up having this massive 10,000 line script of just these lines that happen around various areas of the field, right? So I first recorded my voice and played it that way with my voice and listened to it and then, tweak things, fix things, and then ended up recording him out at ESPN. And
Man.
game ended up getting made. Not all games get made that you work on, right? But ended up
Yeah.
getting made and is out there. So it was cool.
Were you a soccer fan before that? Because that's still in the America was not that big on soccer at that point, right?
Yeah, I like soccer, but I never paid attention to it.
Okay.
But after that, I really grew an appreciation for it.
Okay. And
Um,
I know it's football, but I'm also not to get all southern. I was like, but damn it, we're in America, and it's no, I'm just
right? It's an amazing game, though. It's a really fun game to watch.
it's one of those I need to go see a game live because like I wasn't into ice hockey until
Hmm.
I saw it live, and then it was like, oh, this is a game changer.
Well,
Like
hockey is
seeing
one
it,
of the best sports to watch live. Like
it's insane.
it is. The
And
hits that yeah, on the glass are awesome.
well, and we've got a minor league team here that's really good called the Ice Bears, and they
Okay.
sell out every game in this old school, like late 60s, early 70s Coliseum. So it's still got
Cool.
the wood seats that fit 3/4 of my butt in there.
Hmm.
And like I took a buddy who had never been to a hockey game and we sat next to one another. I was like, I'm sorry for sitting on you. Hi, stranger. I'm sorry for sitting on you. Like, but he was at the end, he was like, this is insane. This is amazing. But
It is.
I also sat down behind the goal for a game
Oh, cool.
and seeing how fast they come at you was, I loved
It's
it.
incredible. Well, that's the cool thing. We have a minor league soccer team here too, sorry, hockey,
Yeah.
Texas Stars. And
Texas
so
Stars.
based off Dallas, but
Yeah.
the arena's small. I mean, it fits like 10,000 people, so you're right there,
Hmm.
right? It's such a great way to experience it.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna go back to Konami. You're working
Okay.
for Konami. So did you get to travel a lot, go to Japan or go to for ESPN to
I
Bristol?
did. I actually went to a game show, went to Tokyo Game Show in Japan, which was a crazy experience.
Yeah.
I got to go to E3 in California.
Yeah.
Traveled out to ESPN a couple of times and, was able to go on a sports center. I saw, the whole set. Um, that was probably the highlight of everything for me. I'm a sports
Yeah.
junkie. I got to go to one All-Star game for Major League All-Star and be on the field.
Crap. Okay.
So recording things and, doing that sort of stuff. And then a couple other games where I just go to watch and we were just doing research is what they called it.
I was going to say for the soccer, did you get to go to any big soccer matches?
Yeah, I don't know if they were big, right? I didn't get
Okay.
to go to any of the championship games, which I wanted to, but probably
Okay.
the All-Star was probably the biggest one. So that
Okay.
was neat to be on the field because, I mean, they're amazing athletes, right? So it's cool to see that.
Okay. I'm going to go back. Let me write down. I've got two questions, but we're going to go back like Marty McFly. We're going to go back in time.
Okay.
Did you grow up like you were talking about kind of being an outdoor kid? Did you grow up with video games like the NES and the
I
Super
did.
NES?
Oh
Okay.
yeah, I still play games today. But grew up playing Atari. Grew up
Cool.
playing Nintendo and Sega and PlayStation, Xbox, everything.
I still have my parents had an Atari 2600 and like 40 games, and I
I'm gonna
still
show
have
you
it
something,
here.
dude.
Oh my
Let me
God.
find it really quick. My parents just sent me a box of all my old 2600 cartridges. One
Okay,
second.
go for it. Like Mike Jones said, I need to insert the Jeopardy theme right here. Holy hell, Pitfall.
Right? Like the amount of memories in this thing, dude, like Pitfall. Oh, here's another one. I had in television,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
television football, right?
Yeah. The
We won't
two,
go too far into this, but
I
and
think the
also
two,
ColecoVision,
oh my
Donkey
God.
Kong.
I think the two I think I have that one because I remember the different colored cartridge. But the
Mm-hmm.
two I think I remember the most are an Indiana Jones game. I think I had the infamous ET game and I had a Spider-Man game.
Oh, nice.
The Spider-Man game was a lot of fun because my dad, when he was in the service, they gave him comic books. So when I was a kid, he gave me all his comic books from like the late 60s, early 70s.
Okay.
All the old Stan Lee Marvel stuff. Like,
Uh,
yeah. Okay, so you were into games. Did you travel? Did you all travel much when you were a kid?
Not really. A little
Not
bit.
really.
We'd go visit family, that kind of stuff, but not a
Okay.
lot.
So was going to somewhere like Japan, was it daunting or nerve-wracking or I'm assume a culture shock?
No, it wasn't. 'Cause at that
Okay.
point, I lived in Hawaii already for about 10 years, maybe a little bit less.
Oh,
And
okay.
Hawaii is such a mishmash of different kinds of people. There's a ton
Okay.
of Japanese there, a lot of Filipino, Korean, Chinese, Vietnamese,
Okay.
Thai. It's a big mix of people.
Okay.
Um, and so I was fairly used to it. And at that point, see, I had worked some restaurant jobs in Waikiki that put myself through college.
Mhm.
And so a lot of Japanese tourists come through, so fairly
Okay.
familiar with it.
Okay.
I mean, anytime you go to a different country, right, it's
Yeah.
always there's a lot to it.
I've only been, I went to Canada for like an hour and a half, and that's the
Okay,
furthest I've ever
all
been.
right.
I've been all over this country, but I grew up super poor, so we didn't get to really go much anywhere.
Uh,
When I worked for PetSafe, the engineers kept trying to figure out a way to get me to go to our office in China because they're like, we just want to see you there. Because one of the
right.
guys was like 6'4", like 320 pounds or so. And he was like, if they look at me, I don't know what they're going to do. He was like, they would stop me and take pictures. He's like, I'm an engineer. Like, I'm a nobody. He's like, I don't know what they'll do because I still kind of look like I could play ball. And he was like, I was like, I would
Right,
have to,
right.
I'd invent a backstory. Yeah, I play for the Trailblazers. Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
For your offensive lineman or
Oh
something.
yeah. 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 What am I saying going for basketball? I look like an offensive lineman. I don't look like a basketball player. It's like, yeah, I play for I make up some team. Uh okay, so you're working at Konami, doing a lot of 3D and audio. How big was Konami at that point? Was it, I mean, like staff wise, was it like a massive company or was it
It
still
was a
kind of,
massive corporation, yeah. So
okay,
in Japan, they have, I don't know, I'm going to say 4 to 500 employees,
okay,
probably at a minimum.
okay,
We used to get these corporate videos every Friday highlighting what their accomplishments were, what was going on, their exercise facilities, all this stuff, right? So it was interesting,
okay.
and so a lot of the people that I worked with there, probably half of them were Japanese at least.
Wow. Okay.
The biggest culture shock for me with that was the quantity of hours that they worked in
Okay.
comparison to the quantity of hours that we were used to working, right? So
Yeah.
they would literally come in at like 7 in the morning, leave at 11 o'clock at night.
Ooh.
But these dudes are sleeping at their desk for like 2, 3 hours at a time, right? They're not spending any time with their families. And so they're literally, that's their life, right? So they're there to work or
Yeah.
be there to look like they're working, right? So
Yeah.
that's just part of the culture.
Okay.
Wasn't something that I ever jumped into. You know, during beta times and alpha times, you know, and submission, when we're getting into these stages where you have to start submitting to Sony, right? Because Sony is also paying for your part of the game.
Yeah.
It gets pretty tight. You're working some crazy hours. Like I was working 14-hour, 16-hour days sometimes.
Yeah.
And you know, I got burned out. Like, you know, because I was there for a couple of years. I was doing some interface stuff too, and doing some web design stuff on the side too. So I was sort of just a jack of all trades in some way there. And I, you know, I realized it wasn't what I wanted to do. Like I couldn't see myself working in the video game industry for the next 2 years, let alone the next 5.
Okay.
Right. Like it was just a burnout.
Okay. So you're working there. Were you doing anything? Was it pretty much work and then go home, or were you doing anything at night? Were you doing any freelance work or anything?
At that point, I wasn't doing any freelance work. You know, I
Okay.
don't think I had the mindset to get into that at that point.
Okay.
You know, and I did a little bit of web stuff for people, but you know, I wasn't into like doing identity and branding and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
That came a little bit later on for me. And plus,
Okay.
it was a little bit different back then too, right? Because the internet was just
Yeah.
sort of starting. You know, it's not like we had the dribble and everything that we have now, right? Where we're all interconnected with everything.
I'm laughing because I worked for a publishing company in the late 90s, early 2000s, where our web printer was in Atlanta, and we would literally get done with the magazine, put it on a SCSI hard drive. There's another old school
Mhm,
term.
mhm.
Put it on a bus to ship it down to Atlanta for
Right.
them to pick it up.
Crazy, isn't it? You
Like,
know, it's crazy because like kids now, right, have no idea
yeah, yeah,
the amount of actual logistics that you had to go through to make something
yeah,
happen,
yeah.
right? Like, yeah.
Oh yeah, and even like collecting, what's it called? Pre-flight. What was that? Flight Checker, I think was the name of the app where you would drop like a Quark Express document and it would
Hmm.
corral all the images, fonts, and it would tell you anything was wrong.
Well,
But
even that
doing
was pretty
that,
fancy.
yeah, yeah, doing that and hitting start and then be like, okay, I'm gonna go get lunch. I'll be back in
Exactly.
like 45
Exactly.
minutes and hopefully it'll
Yeah.
be done by then. Okay, so you working at Konami. So what did you actively look for jobs or did you get recruited to go work somewhere else?
No, at that point, what I did is I quit and I decided that I wanted to go back to school because I hadn't gotten my
Okay.
4th year degree at that point.
Okay.
And so I'm like, okay, you know what? Let me do something that sort of incorporate what I've been wanting to do this whole
Yeah.
time. You know, and also, you know, I had been working in restaurants and in Waikiki and that sort of environment. It just after a while, you know, I see a lot of people that were 40 years old still
Yeah.
working in a restaurant. Nothing wrong with it, right?
Yeah.
But maybe some of the dreams that they had before just went a different way, right?
Yeah.
And so I didn't want to end up on that route. You know, I
Okay.
wanted to go a different direction. You know, so I sort of it was always determined. And both my parents never got degrees. So
Okay.
I always wanted to get my own college degree, right? Like it was really important for me to do that. So I went back, went to the University of Hawaii, and I had a bunch of business credits and some of my art credits from the community college. So I said, okay, I'm going to get 2 degrees. So I ended up getting my marketing degree as well as getting my BFA in design.
Okay. What was the design program like at that point there? Was it pretty hell? I mean, were there a lot of students or was it relatively
It
small?
was pretty good. You know, it's a fairly established
Okay.
program. The teacher had been, you know, she graduated from Yale.
Okay.
So she was a hell of a designer. I didn't personally like her. I had a lot of issues with how she went about things, whatever, but she taught me to be a good designer, right? You know,
Yeah.
then we had another typography teacher that was from England and also went to Yale. And he was, you know, I really liked him. But he was also an amazing designer.
Wow.
And you know, so I was fortunate to get into a program where it wasn't just about learning how to run Photoshop or Illustrator, right? It
Right.
was about learning about ideas
Right.
and how to conceptually go about things.
Yeah.
And, so the first 2 years, year and a half, probably, we didn't even get on a computer. They're all right there in the lab, right? But we're doing everything by hand,
Yeah.
and I don't know if they're doing that anymore at schools. I'm sure
It's
maybe a few are, but
it's so UT here does, I think it's still their graphic design program. You do not touch a computer your first 2 years.
yeah.
You're doing everything by hand, but they just recently removed to where you do not take any art classes, which I think is a mistake. I was like,
So
you
what's
got to
the
learn
core then?
color, color theory. You got to learn, like, I don't know. Uh, but this college I went to was a technical community college, and it was day one, you're on a computer, but in tandem, they were teaching like history of design,
Hmm.
color theory, all this other stuff. It was just like, we have 2 years to get this done. So you're going to be in intro to Mac first semester. So you can get busted on that.
Right, right. And that was sort of like how my community college was kind of like
Yeah.
that, right? So we did have color theory classes and things like that, but I was literally the first batch of students in there. So like I mentioned, right, like it was a guinea pig program.
Yeah.
So a lot of the stuff we learned, they were still figuring it out, right? So that means I'm figuring it out on my own as well,
Right.
right?
Well, and it was also funny because the community college I went to at that point, it was people who had failed out of UT who were like
Hmm.
21, 22, or older people going back to start getting their degree.
Hmm.
So me, I was in there at 17 teaching 40-year-olds how to use a Mac
Right, right. That's
because I'd
funny.
had 4 years of experience of working, having to do all the work myself. Because in the print shop, our instructor, Conley Miracle, he has the greatest name ever.
That's
He
awesome.
knew printing, but he didn't know jack about computers.
Right. So you had to figure it out.
I had to figure it out on my own.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so yeah, it was kind of a weird experience. Okay, so we're gonna go back. You're in Hawaii, you're going to University of Hawaii taking graphic design. So in there, was it a rounded program on design, or did they focus on branding at all?
It
Or
really actually didn't focus on branding very much.
okay,
So a lot of that I ended up learning on my own.
okay.
Right. But the interesting part of that was because I was also doing a marketing degree, right?
Mhm.
I understood where businesses would be coming from
Yeah.
in a sense of what they might need out of a brand and a purpose of why they needed to create a mark or a logo, right? Because that wasn't something they were not teaching that
No.
in design class. And I actually think it's a mistake for a lot of programs that they don't get into those aspects, right? Because as designers, and this, is that we have to solve problems for businesses,
Yeah.
right? That at the end of the day, that's what we do,
Yeah.
right? Like everything that we do is so that to help another person solve their problem so that they can succeed at their business,
Yeah.
right? For at least most of the paid work. I mean, there's other stuff that we do that, for ourselves and, to get in, but a lot of that's driven by money too. And, I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
we all
It
got
was,
to pay the mortgage.
I was going to say it was the same way. Like we didn't really learn branding, but I took tons of marketing promotion. I took one class that my advisor still makes fun of me to this day because I chose a math class over an English class. And
Hmm.
he said, I am still the only person to take the math elective instead of the English elective, but I took advanced probability and statistics.
There you
And my
go.
thought was, if I design stuff, I'm going to have to prove that what I did was right. So why wouldn't I take a class learning how to conduct tests and surveys and stuff? And
Hmm.
that's what I
Hmm.
did in that class. And
Awesome.
now that's all marketing is.
It is. It is.
It's statistics.
Absolutely.
So I
Right. Yeah.
somehow got ahead of the curve on that.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And that's great, man. It's one of the things at Konami, I saw that too, right? Like,
Yeah.
because as a designer, as an artist, right? Like there are people that are pure artists that
Yeah.
can just draw amazing things, right? And they would so often butt heads with what the actual marketing team and product team wanted,
Yeah.
right? Because at the end of the day, they need to hit their quota and make their money. And
Yeah.
they may have a certain vision for it. It may not be right,
Yeah.
all the time, right? But at the same time, they've done their tests and their statistics, and they know the demographics and all this sort of stuff
Yeah.
that goes into selling a product,
Yeah.
right? So
Oh, dude,
gotta understand it, right?
you're
You may not
you're
have to agree, but
you're preaching to the choir because
yeah.
I've had a lot of jobs where I butted heads with a lot of people that I was like, hey, when I worked at PetSafe, I walked the floor at Home Depot and Lowe's to see how our products were displayed in the store and did my like packaging design to reflect that. I didn't just
Mhm.
sit at my computer and say, well, this looks cool. It's like, no, that's not what I'm doing. I'm looking at what's around it. I'm looking at what the other products look like and how we can stand out in there. And it would be fights over that. It's like, this is the dumbest thing. Let's all go. Let's get in the car and let's go.
Let's go.
Like,
Like,
what are you
yeah.
talking about? Like,
Yeah.
branding for me, I worked for a print shop and did a lot of work for ad agencies and design firms around here. So that's where I learned about brand books. They would
Mhm.
send them in and I would have to design like an annual report based on their brand book. And
Mm.
same thing, I just had to pick it up on my own.
Right,
Like,
right. Yeah. After I graduated, I ended up working for a couple of ad agencies. That's where I really sort of get sort of, the basis of how
yeah,
it all works. But, you know, the ad agencies were different than design firms too, right?
yeah,
And, I got frustrated in ad agencies as well because, I'm the art director, but I have no communication with the
yeah,
actual client. And so there's an account executive, an AE in between us. It's like a freaking telephone game.
yeah,
And the AE is giving me their opinion of what they think the client wants, right? And so it's like it was just this weird back and forth all the time with like not all of them, but a lot of them.
yeah,
And it just there wasn't like an easy route getting to what the client actually wanted. Now, design firms, I felt it was different because with a
yeah,
design firm, a lot of the times you're working with the owner of the design firm, and me being like a designer, you being a designer there, you're sitting right next to them and you're
yeah,
having a conversation with them about what they're looking for, what their strategy is, all this sort of stuff, right? And that's more to the point. And so
yeah.
that's really what I try to get at. I work in-house now.
Okay.
So I've worked in-house for 15 years for the same company out of Hawaii.
Yeah.
I do freelance on the side. Um, but I sort of you realize that working with clients, right? Like it's not about us in any way whatsoever.
Mhm. No,
And it's funny, like
it's,
you're talking about your Home Depot. Like
yeah,
every time I go in a grocery store anywhere, I look at every single product and how it's all
yeah,
displayed. I'm going in my head like, okay, why did they choose this route over this competitor's route?
yeah.
It's just
That,
natural at this stage, but
So here, I'll give you a name that I'm sure you know, Charles S. Anderson. I read an
Mhm.
article when I was in college doing a research paper, and he said every time he got a new batch of interns, he would take them to the grocery store or to Walmart. And this is like late 90s when Walmart was
Mm.
big, but not as big as it is now, and say,
Mhm.
let's walk the aisles. And they would always be like, but this isn't where good graphic design is. And he was like, no, this is where real graphic design is. It's
Right, and
like,
good graphic design.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
He was like, this is where 90% of this world will see this stuff, not
Mhm.
the stuff that's in CA that's winning awards. They'll see this stuff. And it
Absolutely.
blew my mind. Like, I was like, oh, yeah, that is true. Like,
That's fantastic because
yeah,
that's what you should be taught,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah. Okay. So you're working for I wasn't laughing at you about the ad agencies. I
I
just
don't know.
remember when I worked in corporate newspapers and had an ad agency pitch us, every single pitch they made was like, I don't know how to say it any other way. It was like sexual. Was
Oh
like,
yeah, they're trying to sell you this crazy experience that they think you're gonna get that
yeah.
it's gonna be so riveting and yeah.
Well, one of them was just two people in the back of a pickup truck. You could see it bouncing, and
Mm.
it was to sell newspapers. And I'm sitting there almost like shaking in the room. And then I finally said, "What does that have to do with new? It'll get their attention." I was like, "No, it won't. What the hell are you talking?" Like, I kind of blew
Emotional
my,
connection, right?
I kind of blew my lid in there. And then later on, I ran into one of those AEs, and he was at a football game and he was super drunk. He's like, "Man, we need to hang out." And I was like, "No, we don't. We're good. We're good. We're good. I don't. No, thank you.
Yeah,
No."
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. It's interesting.
okay. So you work at ad agency, design firms. Was there a point where you're like, I'm going to focus more on getting better at doing branding? On you said kind of on your own.
Yeah, when I started working, the first ad agency I worked at, I started doing, that's when because I hadn't done any real logo for a couple friends, right? You do some
Yeah.
logos here and there, but I hadn't been like hired professionally to do some logo work. And so that was the beginning. I was like, okay, there's something to this that I really enjoy, right? Because it integrates all the stuff I was just talking about, like marketing and strategy and actually helping someone succeed at
Right.
what they're trying to accomplish, right? Like that's where I could get in and actually make a difference. And I
Yeah.
felt more comfortable doing that than working on a direct mail piece for Verizon, whatever. Um, Not that I wouldn't do that stuff anyways, but that was where my passion and my focus started to take me, right? And so what I would do on my own is I would just go to like Barnes and Noble,
Mhm.
uh, because Pinterest didn't exist at that time. And
Yeah.
I would thumb through logo books and I would
Yeah.
just look at all the different logos. Actually, Logo Lounge was a huge one
Yeah.
back in the day, right? I would go through all those and I would just look at all the different logos and different problems that people were solving and make note of it. Sometimes I would just sketch what people had done,
Yeah.
take notes and, started to get about it that way. And then, I would go into the libraries and read about branding if there were books about it and just started to figure it out on my own. And then after the ad agencies design firms, I got hired to work for a bank as a creative director, ran merchandising person,
Okay.
which it was an interesting job. I learned a ton about it. I learned a ton about what I don't want to work with in a corporate environment.
Yep.
Banks are crazy places, right? So when I first started working there, this is in Hawaii, so there are not that many banks. There's about 5 banks there.
Okay.
Um, and 2 of the banks were merging. So I started working with Central Pacific Bank, and they had bought what was called Citibank, not the corporate Citibank that we know of, but
Right.
another one called Citibank with a City, right? And so
Yeah.
they had about 17 branches, and we had about 20 branches. So merging all together, we had 35 branches, right? So what we needed to do was come up with basically a guide that would work with, because we were working with a design firm at the time, that we could then make everything cohesive, right? So we had to change out all the signs. We had to change out like how did the teller mounts work inside of their banks in comparison to ours? What were the poster systems like? What are the ATM machines like? Are they the same systems and where we can change out the art,
Mhm.
right? Or casings themselves, right? Because they all need to be cohesive. And so
Yeah.
it was a ton of work. And so I was driving around at that time when I first started to every single branch and just measuring things, measuring all the windows so that whenever we're doing campaigns and promotions, that we knew the sizes of what was to go in there,
Mhm.
right? And documenting it for all 35 branches. Um, and just figuring out the logistics of what we needed to do.
Yeah.
And then working with the design firm to say, like, okay, and we had this idea, it was called what was it called? For lack of a better word, a living room. So inside of the bank, there was a living room that had a TV, 2 couple couches, a coffee table, and then posters alongside the TV, brochure racks, right?
Mhm.
So this was sort of the idea that we wanted to replicate across every single branch, right? So we needed to figure out how we were going to build that in every branch as well, and visually what was with the message, right? And then how would those end up looking? Uh,
Okay.
and so it was pretty cool because I learned a ton about it from the design firm I was working with at the time because they were super good. And I was really impressed with what they were doing. And then my marketing manager was a really old school dude who was like I still use a term that he uses all the time. Like, what value does that bring to what you're trying to accomplish, right?
Yeah.
So he weighed everything in value. Like everything he would do would be a choice of like, okay, what are the pros? What are the cons? And then he would talk through every single point, right? And like what it meant to us from advertising wise, what it would mean to our clients coming into the branches, what would it mean to us on the back end working in-house of how much work it would require for us to do all of that, right?
Right.
So there's, a lot of things that you probably most people don't even think about in regards to that sort of thing, right? Because there's this chain, and when you work on bigger projects, you start to realize that for every little change, right, there's a ripple of reaction that sometimes it's like a frickin' tsunami that
Yeah.
goes through the entire system and changes everything that everyone is working on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so he was the first one that I had worked with that was really cognizant of that, right? So
That's
every choice that he would make was based off of trying to be not as disruptive as possible, right? But still making the right decision.
I'm laughing because I remember I read this prospectus and I was trying to look up the dude's name, but it's Lynn or Les, but he was essentially the creative director for CBS.
Mm-hmm.
And he talked about when they built their building, and like this 85, 90 page document breaks down every single piece. And it turned down the not disrupting things. He wanted to do, he was like, if you don't do it right, I'm going to change it. And like they installed the elevator panel with like floor 1, floor 2. They did not use the typeface that he said. And he was like, it's got to go. It needs to
Right.
be this. He was
Right.
like, I want people to walk in and they are immersed in this without even them thinking about it. And I think when I read that in like 2004, 2005, I was like, I'd never thought about that before. Kind of like
Mhm.
what you're saying about the couches and stuff, that comfortable living area being in every one creates something that most people don't think about. They walk right past it or something.
Right, right. But that's it though, right? And that's one of the reasons why to use something like Starbucks, for
Yeah.
example, why they're so successful. You
Yeah.
walk in any Starbucks anywhere, you feel the same,
Yeah.
right? Like that experience, I mean, that's branding, right? It's a series of patterns to get people to recognize that it's something they wanted, they either love or they're comfortable with, or they're just loyal to,
Yeah.
right?
So
And
sometimes it drives my friends nuts when I point out stuff. 'Cause
oh, well,
I
for
went to,
sure.
there's a place in the more wealthy part of town here that is a cheese shop, a very nice cheese shop
Mhm.
with a wine bar with charcuterie and stuff next door. So a friend of mine, I was like, let's go check this place out and let's get me some cheese because I will pour over that case of cheese. And we go in the wine bar and I'm like, okay, number one, they've got the overhead lights on. That's not a wine bar vibe. That's not the vibe you're
Mhm.
going for. I was like, the music they were playing, it was going from Spice Girls to 80s Bon Jovi to like Gavin DeGraw from the early 2000s. And it was a little bit too loud. I was like, nope, that's not the vibe. Like, that's not how everything looked because it was all dark and had, leather bound chairs, old
Right.
bookcases. I was like, this doesn't match. I was like, I kind of wanted to find the owner and be like, two small changes.
All right.
Let's get some lamps, not overhead light, lamps going,
Yep.
and to where you can still have good light. And I was like, and let's destroy this playlist. Whatever's playlist this is.
That's probably just some serious radio that the employee's listening to, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It was killing me. But my friend that was with, she was like, I don't care. I love this. She was like, this music is my childhood. So I'm loving this. And I'm
Oh,
like,
right. It hits a different trigger, right?
yeah. I was like,
Yeah.
it's killing me, man. It's like, this does not fit in this,
Yep.
how all of this looks. There's not cohesive. And it is weird to start to notice that stuff when you're out and about. You're like, can we do this, this, and this, please? So do you think your history with marketing kind of helped you when you started getting into branding because you understood that all of that kind of worked together?
Definitely, and that was part of my intention,
Okay.
was to sort of direct myself in that way. Because I knew I wanted to do, more than just making websites and things like that. So yeah, it was definitely an intentional decision for me to go about that way.
Okay. And I'll use a term, and I swear I'm not being snide or dismissive when I say this. It's something I said when I worked at PetSafe that my boss picked up on and kind of poked fun at me at. But when I look at your work, there's a phrase I used to use, I still use, that seems analogous: clean and classy. I know it sounds bad
Appreciate
coming
that.
out of a Southern voice, but anytime I would do stuff, I was like, clean and classy, boss. We got to do it that way. It's got to,
Right.
and when I look at your work, it's like the way the color interacts with the word marks or brand marks. That's the phrase that comes to mind. So I'm
Awesome.
saying that in a very positive way.
Yeah, no, no, absolutely. And I take that as a compliment for
Yeah.
sure. I'm a minimalist at heart, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm not a person that is going to sit there and draw out some logo that's going to have an engraving and all sorts of stuff in it. I try to boil things down.
Right.
Well, one, because I don't draw like that in the first place. Right.
Yeah.
But you know, it's interesting though, right? Because bringing that up, right? Like I think about styles that people have,
Yeah.
right? And and especially the young designers, I think a lot of them get so hung up on finding a style,
Yeah.
right? And that's actually one of the great things I learned from one of my teachers was that, you may think that you're going to have this style, right? And it's just going to be, everything's going to look like this. And it's just not.
Yeah.
What's going to end up happening is you're going to end up having clients that want to look a certain way, that have a certain visual taste that they want to go after. You're going to have all sorts of different needs. What you need to do is have a tool built so that you can go in and you can tackle anything that's given to you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you don't, you're going to end up doing just one line of work the entire time, which you may make money off of, right? But you may
Yeah.
not be able to solve all the problems you want to solve.
That's a struggle I have with a lot of young artists and designers as I see
Mhm.
them cribbing off of what a style of either someone else or something that's trendy. And
Right.
there's part of me that goes, stop making all of your work look this way. Like
Right.
try to do stuff that's a little, if you're going to do this, that's fine. Make that bag, make that money, but you also need to be pushing yourself in other directions. So when this goes out of fashion, you're not SOL, you're not
Absolutely.
screwed.
Well, and one of the things I realized that with that too, and from my young days of doing it, is that we imitate, right? You copy
Yeah.
stuff to learn,
Yeah.
right? And so some people don't know where that line is of imitating and copying, and they
Yeah.
keep going into the direction of just trying to do the same.
Yeah.
Whereas what you should be doing, right, is cool to learn how to do it and to copy what someone else is doing as a style and figure it out.
Yeah.
But just add that into your tool belt and move on,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
realize someday, okay, I may need this certain type of style, right? I learned how to do this, and it's just adding up your skills.
Yeah. It's kind of weird because there's a young artist I'm kind of mentoring right now
Mhm.
that we're in this illustrators group, and I'm trying to think how I can say this without giving it away. We had somebody come and I started following them on social media. And every time they post something they do, which is a lot of, I'm going to use air quotes when I say branding, I'm like, oh, that looks exactly like this. Oh, wait, this next one doesn't even match, isn't even close to that style. You got that off. And it was like everything they have posted, I'm like, I know exactly where that came from. It's like,
Right.
but because you're dealing with smaller companies, they don't understand that. But it also
Yeah.
doesn't fit that company. Like it's one of those, this isn't the artist I'm mentoring. This is somebody completely different.
Mhm.
But it's one of those people. I was like, I can't talk to you because in talking to this person, I was like, I don't think you want to hear this There's part of me who
Mhm.
wants to shake him and be like, hey, stop doing that. Figure out
Right.
what you need to do, get better at what you're doing. Don't just crib off someone else. Whereas the person I'm mentoring would take that criticism. And I had a talk with her the other day about like this thing about like gatekeeping. We shouldn't gatekeep certain things. I was like, I think you should gatekeep certain things because I think some people want the shortcut. They don't want to actually learn. They want the shortcut. And so for that younger designer that I'm frustrated with, I'm like, I'm not going to tell him because it will never sink into him. It will never impact him. It
Right.
will be a shortcut. And I was like, and that frustrates the hell out of me.
Well, and one day he will run into a wall,
Yeah.
right? That he's not going to be able to climb over.
Yeah.
And then he's going to have to realize at that point that, okay, I need to change how I'm working, or this just isn't going to work.
Yeah.
It always
Or
comes back, right? It always does,
yeah.
right?
Or-
I mean, that's one of the things you learn as you get older, right? Like everything, you can't run because it'll
no,
always come around.
no. I'm laughing because it's like how many people that I went to high school with in graphic arts that are no longer in the industry,
Oh yeah.
or how many people I went to college with and graduated with that are no longer in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, like I had 15 kids that I graduated with from college. 3, 4 of us are still
Yeah.
designing.
Yeah.
Not many.
It's
We were the ones though, looking back, we were the ones that were really passionate about it.
so,
Because we would be the ones that would be talking about it all the time and, quizzing each other on typefaces or fonts,
yeah.
just, being dorks. But
There's a there's a buddy and I that we came up with this we didn't come up with it. It's a known phrase, but it's like the difference between a 9 to 5er and a lifer. Like I was like, oh yeah, I'm a lifer when it comes to graphic design. My dad would make fun of me because we go to Hooters and I'd be critiquing the menu. Like there's a
right,
double space there, and this is the kerning is, and Dad would be like, "What is wrong with you, boy?"
right. Do you know where we're at, son?
Yeah, this is I'm not better than this, but this is nobody here's going. Nobody's giving me their number. I'm good. Like,
Right. I
like
think
I
Rand
just
Paul had a quote, right?
ran.
About or Paul Rand, sorry. Paul Rand had a quote about, either you are thinking about design all the time or
Yeah,
you're not. And if you're
yeah,
not, you're not a designer, which I don't completely buy, right?
yeah,
Because I have a couple of designers I work with in my company that,
yeah,
they're moms, they do stuff. They're great designers, but they're not thinking about design when they go home.
yeah. It's
That's cool.
I took a job. I'm about to hit 2 years now. I haven't been very public about this, but I'm working uh, as director of branding for an insurance company. But
Cool.
95% of my work is marketing and SEO. And I
Hmm.
tell you what, after doing this forever, when I come home, I don't think about that job.
Well,
But
right.
but I will totally sit here and draw or come up with like I'm working on an annual report for a nonprofit right now. I was
Hmm.
like, and I just enjoy the hell out of it. But when it
Hmm.
comes to that day job, that marketing stuff, I was like, no, I don't need to think about better ways we can optimize for SEO. I don't want to think of. I'm thinking about that like 8, 9 hours, 8.5, 9 hours a day. I don't want to have to think about that
For
when I get home.
sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
I wouldn't even call that design, right? Like
no.
that's just marketing functional stuff. You
Although
know,
I just did an art piece about frozen pipes, and I did it, and they kind of laughed. They're like, "That's really good." I was like, "Yeah, I've been doing this a really long time, man." That took me like 30 minutes to ideate and do it.
right,
I was
right.
like, and it's not even great. It's just functional. And I took some photo and they were like, that's really good. And I was like, yeah, I've been doing this for a long time, man.
Yeah,
Y'all are not using me to full potential yet. So,
exactly. Well, no, well, most corporate places don't, right?
no.
Because they don't even really realize what can be done.
Yeah. I'm about to start working on some video for them, and that's when they'll figure it out. Uh, it's kind of hilarious because, like, yeah, I have this idea. It's in my head. Don't worry about it. I'll just do it. Just let me
Right.
do it. Leave me alone. Just let me do it. Okay, here's kind of the end quick hitter questions.
Okay.
Uh, what would you like, or anything, what would you like to see more of in like design and branding or creativity nowadays or for the future?
You know what I would like to see? Guy, One, God, this is hard to quantify in a way, but what I would like to see is, especially like social media, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of what we see is just regurgitated, copied work,
Yeah.
right? So like we were talking about people trying to find their styles, right? Like I would love, and this won't ever happen, but I would love to stop seeing articles about trends,
Yeah.
right? And how, logos are this way this year and not this, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
all this is, it's silly to me. Like I would love to see people actually hone in on their craft, like
Yeah.
really just focus on getting better at what they do, right? And not paying so much attention to what everyone else is doing. Because
Yeah.
I think that's one of the huge pitfalls that we're in right now with social media, right? Is that there's so much noise and so many things to look at that we don't know, I think, how one to value like our own work compared to other people's work, in the sense that I think maybe especially with younger designers is that they're not paying attention enough to what they need to do and paying more attention to what other people are doing,
Yeah. Yeah.
if that makes sense, right?
It,
So
yeah. I'm just thinking in that world, I'm kind of tired of seeing, I'm trying to think of an example because of ad agencies, seeing stuff that does not fit the brand.
mhm,
Like Waffle House partnered with some bougie candle company and had a Waffle House candle that was $50. And all
interesting.
I was thinking is that's an ad agency's idea. And that's a stupid idea.
Yeah. And we heard a
Like,
lot of that, right?
yeah,
Like, well, especially too, as again with social media, is that you do all these sort of cross marketing promotions, and even trying to get like influencers to like light the candle in their freaking hotel room or whatever
yeah,
it is.
yeah,
It's all just pollution. There's just so much of it, and it's hard, man. It's
yeah.
'cause you and I didn't grow up with it.
No.
No, like it's just, I can only take so much of it now. Like,
Yeah. There's a friend of mine that's been working in like news and PR for her entire life. She's a few years older than me, though she'd murder me if she ever heard me refer to her as a few years older than me. But she and I, our DMs and texts, it's just crapping on other people of just being like, what is this? Why are
mhm,
there 37 emojis in this one post that has 10 words in it? Or
right.
just like, why is this local company, trying to think of a good example? They're doing social media for a local music venue. Why are the people from the content creators, air quotes, in the video? They have nothing to do with, they're the agency. They
Hmm.
have nothing, they're trying to build their own brand. It's like, that's our fussing about that kind of stuff. It's like, you're not important here. It's about
Yeah,
the music hall. It's not about you,
right,
man.
right. Well,
Just,
and that's a huge thing. I see also, I mean, another thing too, like designers on Instagram and Dribble, mostly Instagram, but are constantly redesigning these gigantic corporate companies, right?
yeah.
And I get it, it's a kind of a cool exercise, right? But at the same time, none of them really have any thought behind why companies are doing things a certain way, the marketing,
Yeah.
I mean, like the whole huge brief behind it all, right? And
Yeah.
it's all just, and I hate to use this word, but narcissism,
Yeah.
like just straight out doing it for likes and attention, right? And, and they're probably bringing clients and whatever, cool. But it
Although
drives me.
I will say, please cast a blind eye when I do. I'm trying to work through building Feral Giant back up this year and do
Mhm.
more. So, excuse me, trying to create more time for that since I've been working the day job. But one of the things I want to do is do a weekly series on dream clients, but
Mhm.
not do rebranding, but
Mhm.
do if they were come to me and ask for a piece of art in my style, what would I create for them?
That's cool. That's
And I was
different.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's completely different because I'm not
Yeah.
rebranding. My top two are Oreo and Waffle House, which I think is kind of hilarious because it's not Nike or one of
Well,
these
right.
big
Those are the
brands.
digital ones. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's the ones that actually mean something to me.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I would want to create art that's art, air
Mhm.
quotes. It's art more than it is a brand piece or whatever, but it
Are
makes
you a
more sense than
painter or like what do you do? Do you just sketch pencils for fun?
I can't even draw well by hand. Like
Right?
I like to draw, I can draw an Illustrator and I get made fun of because I still use a mouse to
So do
draw.
I. Yeah.
I was like, I can't draw on a tablet. I'm not a good freehand illustrator,
Yeah. I'm
but
not. Yeah.
I know how to draw. That's why in this illustrators group, I've got a book and all I've been doing is drawing like these patterns
Hmm.
from page to page. I was like, I'm not drawing anything specific. I'm just drawing these patterns, wondering if they'll lead to something. Like there
Hmm.
was one that I came up with. I was like, oh, this would be a good idea for a print that I could scan this in and redraw this in Illustrator and actually print out like a 2-color print on a letterpress of
Right.
this.
Right.
I was like, I think that would be a lot of fun. I was like, but yeah, no, I'm not good at drawing by hand. So even my sketches for like layout or brand or anything, I was like, this is the worst sketch thumbnail ever. But but in my mind, it makes sense.
Well, that's the most important thing, right?
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
once the client sees it too, right? Then
yeah,
yeah, yeah. I envy, I mean, some people just draw so well that,
yeah.
you know, that's not me. But
There's a buddy of mine who listens to this, my buddy Tommy, that he once texted me. He's like, oh, I just came up on the podcast. I was like, I didn't say anything negative. He's just an insanely talented illustrator, and I
Mhm.
wish he'd illustrate more. And Tommy, please don't yell at me for saying that, but he is like this crazy, like he does heavy metal, like he's done album covers and stuff. And he is
Cool.
such a good illustrator that I
Cool.
want to see him do more. And if he's listening to this right now, sorry, Tommy, for calling you out again, but at least I didn't
And
use your
do
last
more,
name.
Tommy.
Yeah. He's going to come down to Austin after he gets done with me.
Right?
Okay, is there anybody, do you have any dream clients? Like, is there anyone you would like to work with?
I don't know. Like I can't say it. Like there's nobody like in particular.
Okay,
I mean, maybe somebody in the NBA. Like,
okay,
let me think about it. I'm a basketball. I grew up playing ball.
okay,
I'm a basketball junkie. Um, more than any other sports. So yeah, maybe like the Nuggets or something like that.
okay.
But no, I don't really have like, I maybe I used to.
Yeah,
I don't really have like dream clients or that sort of thing anymore. Like if someone comes along that is an industry I haven't worked in, that's cool.
okay. Okay, I got to take a side quest here because
Yeah.
of where you've worked. Who is the most famous person you've ever met?
Oh my God, dude. Holy crap. Oh, that's tough. When I worked at Duke's, which is in Waikiki, right on the beach, I waited on a lot of famous people.
Oh,
And
okay,
I'll just go through like a list of people that I've waited on. Dennis Rodman, Carmen Electra.
okay. I like one of
Interesting
those more
couple.
than the other. Yeah,
Yeah, they were interesting.
okay.
Probably the most excited I was about was John Elway
Oh,
because
crap.
as a kid growing up in Colorado, like he was like my hero,
Yeah.
right? Super nice dude.
He's a big
He's a
dude
big
too.
dude.
Yeah,
He's a big dude.
yeah.
Yeah. Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, when they were filming Pearl Harbor, waited on them, and they were
Oh,
super nice
cool.
dudes. Really, really enjoyed talking with them.
That's awesome.
Um, Eddie Vedder,
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. He spends a lot of time in Hawaii and
he
has for a
does,
long time.
and
Yeah.
he was very drunk.
I've seen them live a few times. Yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, and he probably wasn't as nice as he could have been, but whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Who knows? Yeah.
who
Who knows
knows?
what was going on that day?
Troy
Yeah.
Aikman, Emmett Smith, like because Pro Bowl would come through too, right? So they would all come in
Oh
here.
yeah. Yeah.
God, who was that one boxer? Mayweather?
Floyd
Mayweather?
Mayweather?
Weather.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he was, and then a big sumo dude, Aki, what was his name, man? He was the biggest human I've ever seen in my life. Like
Man.
he's
Okay.
probably like 6'6", 380, something like the dude
Holy
sat
shit.
on 3 chairs. Like it was just huge.
Oh my God. I was going to say
Um,
the whole reason I'm asked this is because the second most famous person I've ever met in my life, what I think you'll appreciate, it was Charles Barkley.
nice. Oh, I'd love to meet Barkley.
I was in Atlanta at Cam Newton's cigar lounge called Fellowship,
All right.
And I guess there was an NBA game there, so he came through and me and my buddy were there at like 5 o'clock when nobody else was there. Charles came in with his agent,
Hmm.
who was like this 6'3" tall woman. And I was like, okay, she had to play basketball. Like she is massive. Like,
Right,
and
right.
we're sitting there, and he goes back to pick out cigars, and my buddy is like, you have to go get another cigar. You have to go get another cigar. You have to go get another cigar. And so the door, I was like, all right, I'm going. And I went and opened the door, and he did a double take looking at me. And he's like, how we doing today, big man? Because I am 2 inches taller than Charles Brown.
Right, right, right. Yeah, which he doesn't come across very often, I'm sure, right?
No. And then the guy was dealing with him, did not like that I was in that humidor with the two of them. And I ended up picking out a cigar for him.
Oh, that's cool.
But by the time we got, I guess word had gotten out because by the time I left there, he and his agent were already being moved up to VIP. I was like, man, we're the only
Ah,
two people in here, and they're getting him away from us. I was like, I'd love to talk to him for like 5 minutes because he's funny as hell, and
I,
he's
I
from
imagine. He
he's
seems
from
real.
he's from Auburn, so I can give him hell about the SEC. And
Hmm.
Bruce Pearl's coaching basketball at Auburn. He coached at UT. Like, I just want to talk to him for like 5 or 10 minutes. I don't need to occupy all his time, man.
Yeah.
Like, and also he's sitting here hanging out smoking a cigar. He's not busy. But that's number two. Number one's
He'd
Tom
probably
Cruise.
welcome the conversation.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Number one is Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise is, I think, I win.
Is he
Like
as
that.
little as,
He is. He
yeah.
is. And I think he was wearing lifts when I saw
Was
him.
he?
But
So I think he's like what, 5'4", something like
I
that.
think 5'4", 5'5". I think he
Yeah.
says like 5'8". He was not 5'8".
Yeah, he's a little dude.
But yeah, I
That's
met him.
cool.
I didn't talk to him, but he looked up at me and nodded at me, and that I did a good. I It was at a movie premiere here in Knoxville, and I've told this story. God, I'm sorry for anybody having to hear this story again, but there was some autograph hound dude that pushed a kid out of the way, and I just reached up, grabbed the dude by the chest, and pulled him back.
Mm,
And I saw in Tom's eyes where he saw my big ass paw come through. He was like, "Wait, what is happening here?" And then he saw me pull the dude back, and I think he realized what was going on, and he just nodded at me, and he signed the kid's autograph. He was super nice to
that's cool.
everybody there, and everybody that had to work with him, because Regal Cinemas is based here
Okay.
and in Knoxville and was started here, and everybody who had to work with him was like, "Oh no, nicest guy in the world." I was like, "Yeah, doesn't surprise me." So I thought you might like the Barkley. The Barkley one is still. I couldn't believe it happened. Like
Oh, that's awesome.
and also Cam Newton came in later, and he
Huh.
did the same thing. He was going up to VIP, and he saw me sitting there, this big dude, and he actually started going upstairs, and then came back down, looked at me, and gave me a heads up. And
Right. Like
he
you're
was
part of
like,
his clan.
"Yeah, who's this? Who's this big white boy? Did he play ball with me?" I was like, "No,
Right,
man,
right.
just
Oh,
sitting here
funny.
eating steak, smoking cigars, drinking very nice whiskey. So no, I'm good."
Oh,
Uh,
that's funny. I
yeah.
met Reggie Miller once. He was at the Starbucks in
Oh yeah,
Waikiki. And
that's awesome.
I went up, I had to shake his hand. Like
Yeah.
me and my wife were there, and I'm like, that's Reggie Miller. She's like, who? I'm like, Reggie Miller, you don't even know. Like this dude, like he would just go crazy. So I walked up to him. I said, thank you for the Spike Lee moment.
Oh,
He gave me a little laugh.
oh
And I was just like, like seriously, man, thank you. You were awesome.
my God.
And I just walked away, right? Nothing more than that. But
Oh, oh yeah, dude. Like I used to do some work for Visit Knoxville here in town, so I would go like the Fanboy Expo and shoot video of celebrities. And
mhm.
anybody I met, I was always just like, "Hey, nice to meet you. Thanks for coming to Knoxville. Hope you enjoy your time while you're here." And that's all I'd say. And then just walk away. I did get Hacksaw. If you follow wrestling, Jim Duggan did cut a promo to me
That's
about
awesome.
Knoxville. And I'm sitting
Okay,
there
cool.
holding my phone like up looking at it to make sure
Hmm.
everything's in frame. And he
Hmm.
started cutting the promo and the phone started going down. I was like, oh my God, Hacksaw, is anybody else seeing this? Hacksaw Jim Duggan? Oh my God, what is that? I was freaking out, man.
Nice, dude. That's awesome.
uh okay. Do you set goals or a checklist for what you want to do?
Uh, yes, I do.
Okay.
In the sense that and nowadays, like I have a full-time job, right? So I
Yeah.
don't like take every freelance client that I get across. I'm fortunate in the sense that I can sort of pick and choose which clients I like to work with.
Yeah.
So I still want to, I try to do a financial goal for my freelance every year.
Okay.
But I also set a goal for industries that I haven't worked a lot with, right? So if I haven't done a lot of restaurant work, I write that say, I'd like to do some restaurant work. And, because sometimes we can sort of manifest that stuff,
Mhm.
right? Because while you may not have ever worked with a restaurant, for example, you can do some sort of mock branding
Yeah.
and put yourself into the realm of like, okay, if this was a restaurant, how would I envision it? What would their logo be like? What would the menus look like? What would the whole thing be like, right?
Yeah.
And, I've got a few of those in my portfolio that brought me tons of work over time. And so, I try to do that as best I can as much time will allow.
Yeah.
And I also have skill wise, right? Like like software wise or whatever it might be, like I haven't learned Figma yet. And so my
Yeah.
goal this year and in the first part of the year is to start integrating Figma into our workflow at work, right? And so I'm going to learn that and get up to speed with that because it's something we need to keep up with.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't gotten into that. I think mine this year is just to try all these ideas I've had that I've wanted to implement for Feral Giant is to actually do them this year.
Mhm.
Like the dream client pieces, like
Mhm.
I am also bad about it's not procrastination. I don't know what the word is for it, but it's like I haven't started this yet because I know once I start it, I will never stop it. I will die before I will end it. Like if I
Right.
do monthly email blasts, I will do them until the day I die. Like the same thing with this podcast. I do it because it's every 2 weeks and I don't miss a week, knock on wood. Um, and some of that, it's not procrastination. It's just like mentally, I'm not ready yet to do this because I know once I turn it on, I will not turn that faucet
Oh, right.
off.
So you understand your own time commitments then.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Well, that's good. It's
Yeah.
good.
All right. So do you know what you'd like to do in the next 10 years?
In the next 10 years, man, well, I'm 50. So I'm like gearing up towards, what retirement might look like.
Yeah.
Um, and what that is, I'm not exactly sure yet. Me and my wife discuss, where we want to be and what we want to do. I'll probably still be designing until I'm like 80,
Yeah.
until I can't remember anything. Yeah, it's just one of those things. I think about it all the time. It's just something I do. I would do it even if I didn't have a job, right? So that aspect of it, I don't think about too much. But as far as where I want to be in 10 years, like my kid's 15 now, he's going to be off to college in 3, 4 years. We're talking about moving out of Texas
Okay.
or keeping our house here. One of the long-term plans, what we want to do is buy a house in Japan. Um, and then
Okay.
also a place in like Costa Rica or something like that. So
Yeah.
that we spend 2, 3 months in Japan. Because I can only be there for like 90 days at a time
Oh, okay.
due to the visas, right? So she can
Okay.
be there longer because she's no longer, she's an American citizen,
Hmm.
but since her family's there and everything, she could be there longer if she wanted to be. And
Okay.
then so split our time between Costa Rica, Japan, and the States.
Okay.
That's sort of the long-term idea.
Those warm weather climates.
They are, man. Except for Japan, but we would go there in the
Oh,
summertime, right? But
yeah.
it's super hot there too. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah. A friend of mine went there and she showed me photos and videos. And any video she did of herself, you could just see the sweat pouring off of her. And I was like, oh my God. Because she
Yeah,
was like, yeah,
yeah,
air conditioning's not really. I was like, okay, that tells me never to go over there in the summertime. I would die.
yeah. It gets ridiculously hot. Um, but like goal wise, work wise, like I said, I've been with the company I'm with now for 15 years, so I will probably retire with them.
Okay.
Um, I feel blessed. They are an amazing company to work for. It's not the most exciting. If someone's listening from there, they know it. But we're an HR and staffing company,
Okay.
right? So we outsource HR to companies and we do temporary and permanent staffing. But the owner of the company is just an amazing human being. And
Okay.
he takes care of everybody that's worked there. So literally, there's so many people that have worked there for 20, 30 years.
Have you ever seen the movie Dave?
I have.
Okay. That's immediately that what comes to mind of the everybody gets a job today or whatever it was he said.
Yeah. So, but the freelance right on the side is what keeps my creativity fresh and growing. And they're cool with me doing it too. So,
yeah.
All
right. Final question. If you could talk to the 14-year-old version of yourself, what would you tell them?
Oh my God. Wow. Take more chances.
Okay.
And don't do so many stupid things.
I think that's what everybody could tell the 14-year-old.
Right. Like I did some just stupid things. Fortunately, I never got caught for any of it. But when I was, 14, 18, I wasn't the best student.
Yeah.
I was out and about creating trouble, doing things I shouldn't be doing. Started drinking when I was like 15. I wasn't like a heavy drinker, started smoking weed, and, just sort of just messing around, right? Like I never had a focus until I was maybe like 23, 24. And so it took me longer than most, people that age to figure out sort of the direction they wanted to go. And I don't have any regrets over that, right? Because it led me to where I'm at and what I've done and, feel great about all of that. But at the same time, could have been more focused.
Okay.
Yeah. Because, at that age, right, you think you know so much when you really don't know anything at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've given many a young person a talk. I was like, I understand. I've been in your shoes before. It's like, just trust me. I'm not here to crap on you just to crap on you. I'm just telling you from here.
Yeah, and we get it, at that age it's not easy, right?
Yeah.
And luckily, fortunate for us, we didn't have social media.
Yeah.
Like I can't imagine like what life would have been like,
No.
Like I literally can't like
because the archiving of it all, that anybody can pull up anything at any time. And also all I've heard about the bullying of young girls, like is just unfathomable to me. Like
it is, right? I mean, it's just, like the whole influencer vibe that we have going on right now. Because that's kind of bullying in a way too, right? Because they all look up to who these people are, and there's just a lot of just fakeness out there, right?
Yeah. Here, I'll end on this positive. If you can find it on there, I don't know where it's at, but it's a TikTok video that it made me laugh uncontrollably. And it was, what if Mary was an influencer? And it's this woman acting like Mary going live.
Cool. I'll look it up.
And it's just like, no, I already talked about how Joseph reacted when I told him. It's just, and she has like the light rap music cutting in and out from the background. Like, it's like, I don't know who this young woman is, but I have faith in the young people because this is absolutely astounding. This is amazing. This is such good comedy that people don't understand how accurate this is. Like, it's so good.
Awesome. I'll check it out.
But anyway, thank you for being on.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me. I'm glad we finally do this.